Welcome to Lighten the Legal Career Path. I'm your host, Erica Moore-Burton. Whether you're a new attorney looking for inspiration or guidance, or further along in your career, wondering how to get to the next level, or someone that's just simply curious about the legal world, you're in the right place. We'll be talking to female and BIPOC attorneys not only about their remarkable stories of success, but the challenges they've faced along the way, the lessons they've learned, and their valuable insights about their career and the road ahead.
My name is Lisa Helfend Meyer. I am the senior and one of the founding partners of a boutique family law firm, and the firm is known as Meyers, Olson, Lowy, and Meyers, and we specialize in all aspects of family law.
Let's dive into today's conversation. Today, I'm talking to Lisa Helfend Meyer. Lisa is at the helm of one of the most respected family law firms in the state of California. Lisa, thanks for taking the time out to speak with me this morning. I'm super excited for our conversation. We had a bit of a pre-call earlier this week, and I know that what I'm most intrigued about and what I want to hear most about is business development. And it's really a topic that's sort of at the forefront of my mind as I'm speaking to female lawyers. And for you, you are at the helm of this powerhouse of a law firm. And I know you've been practicing for quite some time now, but you've got an enviable practice and book of business. I want to hear all about it. But let's go back to the beginning, and maybe you can just tell us about your career to date and tell our little listeners a little bit about your role and your journey to the helm of Meyers Olson.
Sure. Well, when I was in college and graduating, I had worked a summer at ABC in the news department, and I found the culture to be very misogynistic. And I just realized coming out of that experience that I needed to do more than just getting a college degree in order to pay my way in the world. So when I was finishing college with a communications degree, my father said to me, "You're going to go to law school." So I said, "Okay." And never realizing, what commitment I had made. So I did go to law school, and it was very challenging. I did not enjoy it. And then when I finished law school, there was a recession of sorts, and I could not get a job. So I started volunteering my time at a woman's clinic doing domestic violence restraining orders. And I found that very, very satisfying and fulfilling to help women in those situations.
Mm-hmm.
And I quickly realized that it didn't matter what your race was or what your socioeconomic status was, that all women and men too, but it was a clinic involving women, could be victims of domestic violence. So that started me on my journey in family law. And I initially worked with my ex-husband. Mm-hmm. Then I started working with another attorney in 1989. And then in 2000, I opened up my practice with two of my former associates. And I remember the first time that I went to my office, and it was a corner office, and it was huge and beautiful. And I just remember thinking, I made it. I did it.
Yeah.
And, that was already 25 years ago. So the law has really changed since then. So that was the beginning of my journey, and it's evolved since then.
Great. Thank you. So as you talk to us a little bit about your journey in building the firm to what it is today. I know that you've received many accolades over the years, from various institutions. But how have you been able to brand yourself over the years, and how have you been able to really, really build the business to what it is today?
I think with a lot of hard work. I think it's impossible to practice in the area of family law, especially without being 100% committed to it. You can't just dip your toe into it. And I think I made a commitment early on that I was going to put 100% of my time into it, notwithstanding the fact that I, was married and had children and had, a family and a social life and everything else. So I think, what I started to do very early on was practice exclusively in the area of family law, specialized early on in trial work. Like I did a lot of trials involving custody, involving, finances and things like that. And I think after a while, you get a name for yourself. So what I wanted to do was create a brand about our firm. And originally my vision was it was female only. And I realized, you can't do that. It has to be more diversified. So I created a firm that was very litigation oriented, but we had the reputation that not only could we try cases, but we could also settle cases. And what I tell prospective clients and the attorneys that work for me as well is that in order to be able to really settle a case properly for a client, you have to be willing to try it. And others have to believe that you would be willing to try it. So that's kind of how I think, I developed my relationship early on, but I cannot understate the importance, I should say overstate. I cannot overstate the importance of hard work. And, when I was a young attorney and I had babies, I would get up in the morning. Originally it was at 5:30 and start doing a lot of my paperwork that then evolved into, 4:30, 4:00. So before my children got up, I already had a head start on the day. Right. And I think that helped me too, but lots of hard work and, giving up a lot of things that maybe other people don't want to give up.
Like what? What have you felt that you've had to give up over the years?
I think, lunching with the ladies, a lot of my friends, in the early years would go to mommy and me groups and be involved in their kids' schools. And, later on, a lot of my friends now that were older play cards all the time or golf. I don't have time for that. But, I always did make time for my family. So, I always did mommy and me. I would go to mommy and me wearing, a suit, being ready to go to court. And then I would try to drum up business when I was in the mommy and me class. So I would literally go from the playground with my kids to a courtroom. And, it's being able to compartmentalize and be able to do that and make those adjustments.
Got it. So as you, few lead on questions, but as you've sort of built your firm and book of business, I hear that you've juggled a few plates. What has been sort of the biggest challenge in building the firm for you and in building your book of business? What's been the biggest challenge?
I think the biggest challenge I want to say is, a couple things. I think it's continuity. I'm a firm believer that when a young associate, male or female, comes to your firm, that you want it to be a lasting relationship. It's very difficult, I think, as a business owner to have turnover because you put a lot into training somebody. And, when somebody leaves, for whatever reason, they don't fit in, they want a different opportunity, it's difficult, to manage that. So I think I've put a lot of work into building relationships within the firm so people will stay, not only in terms of financial benefits, but personal relationships as well. So there is a connection. So I think it's not easy to always maintain that, especially, as you know, in this current environment where people change jobs without a moment's notice because they're getting, an increase of, 20% or more in their compensation. So I think that's been a challenge. I think it's a very competitive area of the law.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a small group of us that are kind of at the top of what we do. So we're all competing for the same business. So it's maintaining your integrity in getting business and not saying negative things about your competition.
Mm-hmm.
And, that can be a challenge. And also it's a challenge when somebody will come to you and say, oh, I interviewed with so-and-so and this is what they said about you. And it's not, very flattering.
Right.
And it's being able to take the high road about
Mm-hmm.
that and not get petty and say, well, they must have had a good reason to say that, or, it's more a reflection on them as opposed to yourself. But that doesn't mean that you need to be self-reflective as well.
This show is sponsored by Roundhill Legal Search. For the past 10 years, Roundhill Search has been placing attorneys of all levels with our trusted clients, from AmLaw 100 firms to the solo practitioner. Visit us at roundhillsearch.com for more information, to find great legal talent, or to step into your next legal role. So as we had a conversation earlier this week where I was really telling you that I'm having more and more of these conversations with female lawyers that are at a certain point in their career and are either having a challenge finding another job because they're trying to move from their firms to go to another firm. And the biggest question that our clients are asking us is, okay, tell me about the person's book of business. And invariably, 9 times out of 10, there is no book of business. And me hearing this over and over again, I really am on a mission to really encourage younger lawyers not to neglect building their book of businesses, even starting as early as year 1 or 2. I know that they're focused on the practice and honing their skills as a lawyer, but this is a piece that absolutely cannot be neglected. So I want to talk to you about the early years. And did you start to develop business in those early years, or did it happen later on for you? Or talk to us a little bit about that, because again, I'm on a mission to really impart this message about the importance of developing relationships early.
Yes, and I'd love to help you with that as well. So I think you have to do it from the minute that you're sworn in, and that means whether or not you are a sole practitioner like I was, where I had no one to rely upon other than myself. So I had to go out and I had to build relationships immediately. And, I would do that by getting involved with organizations. I remember getting involved with Jewish Family Services where, I would lecture. And I remember one of the first things thinking about was, well, Jewish men never abuse their spouses. And how naive I was to think about that. Like I said earlier, it doesn't matter who you are and your gender. I mean, you can be, abused. And, one of the things that I've seen that really is incredible, you see successful women at the pinnacle of their career making millions of dollars a year, and they could be victims of abuse.
Absolutely.
But anyway, I digress. So I think really early on, you have to know who you are and start developing relationships. So I was not one to join, a legal group. That just wasn't my jam. So, I would do it more informally, like I would meet somebody and then I'd follow up and, have drinks with them or coffee with them or offer to go to their law firm and to give a speech on, some aspect of family law. But it was really putting yourself out there and making sure everywhere I went, whether, it was a 1-year-old's, birthday party in someone's backyard, to a more, formal charity event to let people know that what I did for a living, because
Right.
people don't do that enough. And
Right.
so you really have to do it, and you have to say to yourself, and I know this is one of your questions, the best advice I ever got was from my mother, and that was, don't rely on a man. And
Yep.
nowadays I've changed that to don't rely upon anyone.
Anyone. Right.
You got to rely upon yourself.
Right.
And, that's what I did.
That's so funny because that's the best piece of advice that I got from my mother as well. My mother, fiercely independent person, but she would say never ever rely on anybody else but yourself. And I don't think we've all grown up with that message. I certainly have friends that message was sort of turned on its head, and just find somebody you can rely on, right? And that hasn't ended up too well, in their lives. But that is the biggest thing. You gotta be independent, right? And you gotta be able to feed yourself. I've always said, I've got to feed myself, and I got to feed my family. How's it going to happen? Build relationships, go out there, build business.
Right. And even if you are lucky enough to work for a large firm, let's say, you still have to develop your reputation within that firm. You just can't be a scrivener or a journey person where you're just going to take work from somebody, because eventually one day you're going to be practicing for 25 years and no one's going to hire you because of the fact that you are commanding so much in terms of compensation, but you don't have that book.
Yeah.
And we won't make someone a partner now unless they have a book of business, because it financially, the numbers don't work.
It doesn't make sense. Just out of curiosity, what is that number for you and the firm? Like, how much business would somebody have to make partner at your firm?
I would say at least $1 million,
Okay.
if not more.
Yeah. And that number scares people, right? That number can scare somebody, like, oh my God, how am I going to be able to develop a book of business? My thing is, it's development. It doesn't necessarily happen in an instant. You build it over time, right?
Right. And also, I think, being young, when I started practicing, I was 24 years old, and I looked 24, and I probably acted like I was 24. And so I wouldn't be able to go to the head of a Fortune 500 company and peddle my wares at
Right.
that point. But I could with somebody my age,
Right.
male or female, and, develop relationships. So I was speaking to somebody the other day about business development, and what he says to his associates is cultivate relationships with your peers. So law school buddies, parents in your kids' classrooms, other people that are your age and are doing similar things to you, because eventually it'll pay off. And I think also it's having patience.
Yes.
So even though it may take a year, it may take longer to get that referral. But I think one of my best cases ever was from this guy. I met his wife in Mommy and Me. And I always liked her. I met her husband. We became, like couples friends, going out to dinner. He was a probate attorney. And when I started my own practice, he referred me one of the biggest cases that I had to date.
Wow, that's great. That's great, from a Mommy and Me class. That's great. Yeah.
And being vulnerable. I think it's opening yourself up and, letting people know who you are, because what people want to see, and this also helps, I think, get business, is not only show that you're competent in your field, but also that you're a compassionate person. Because anybody can be competent.
Right.
I could tell you 10 lawyers that have my level of legal competency, but they don't have my level of compassion, or they don't have my level of intuitiveness.
Right. And you hit on something about developing, the relationship with your peers. here's something that I think younger associates can do easily as well. You can platform borrow, right? So a junior associate comes into your firm, they can't go to the CEO of a big firm and ask for the business, but they can talk about you if they know your background, if they've been able to get to know you, and then they could bring you into that business, right? Make introductions so that business can be developed that way. And I think that's also a piece that is often sort of forgotten about. Platform borrow, right? I don't have the experience yet, but Lisa does. So let me tell her experience and invite her along to a meeting. Set up a lunch, invite her out to the meeting. But as you said, you got to put yourself out there as well.
Right. And you can't be afraid of rejection. And, I think we're all so focused on being rejected and thinking it's about ourselves. It's not.
Right.
Maybe they just have a busy week and they can't meet with you, or, they were inundated with, requests for luncheons and things like that. So you also have to be persistent, but in a nice way.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Has anyone ever done that at your firm before, like a younger associate being able to get any business by, touting your platform?
All the time. They'll ask me, if they have like a business manager, if
Right.
if I would go out to lunch with them, or if there is a potential new client coming in, they'd want me to meet with them. But I do it the reverse too. Like I'll say, oh, a potential client is coming in today. Would you, John, sit in the meeting with us and meet with the client as well, with the hope that you can transfer some of the workload to somebody else, and
Right.
then they can build relationships. And there's a lot of times that the initial contact was with me, but then it was extended through somebody else.
If you're enjoying today's conversation, please share with another attorney in your network and send us your questions to podcast@roundhillsearch.com. I was reading this article. I think I'd mentioned it to you. Since the pandemic, people have become less social, right? People are, this is our plight at Round Hill Search when we're grappling between younger associates that don't want to go into the office. They want this hybrid schedule, and it's really tough for anybody to be in 5 days a week now. So people would sort of rather hide at home behind the computer. And, my advice is you got to get out there. You got to be visible. You got to go into the office. You got to show your face. Can you speak a little bit about that in your practice and in general, about getting out there, even though we've gone through this pandemic and our social habits have sort of gone in the other direction as well?
Yeah, I think if you're one of those kind of people, I think you have to go against the grain and you have to train yourself. You can't hide.
Right.
Whether it's a big firm and you're a young associate, or you're starting your own firm, you need to get out there and you need to be able to socialize for a multitude of reasons. Number one, I think socialization is good for all of us. And I think, being around your peers, being around more experienced attorneys, you learn from that. I'm the opposite. When the pandemic came, I have a fear of being home alone.
Right. Okay.
And so I think that stems from my mother too. So
Right.
I got back in the office immediately.
Oh,
And
really?
I
Okay.
probably never left. But I can understand some people. I just think it's a mistake. But as a business owner too, I think you have to respect other people's feelings and positions on that. I mean, if I were a young associate, is that something I would do? No. I mean, if I were a young associate and I was even afforded the opportunity to work a couple days at home, I would show my boss that I'm all in and I wouldn't do it. But that's
really?
just
Okay.
me.
Yeah.
I think that's just me, and I think people now, when I was coming up, my generation, I think you had to prove that you could do it all. And, I find it so interesting these days. Like when I could never say to a judge, Your Honor, can we stop at 1:30 today because I have to take my child to a doctor's appointment? Or now, young attorneys, male and female, I all the time, and judges oblige them. Oh,
Oh,
sure.
wow. Wow.
But it just was very, very different when I was coming up.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think it's the good and the bad too.
Yeah. And things evolve and things change, but some things still remain the same because you're not going to get business being at home, right? Behind hiding. That's just not how it's going to happen. What are some of the pitfalls in your mind that young lawyers should avoid in attempting to get business for themselves, for their firms, and especially female lawyers as well?
Well, I think I think that the important thing is you want to sell your skills. You want to sell your legal skills. You want to sell your, your personal attributes, positive attributes like, confidence and compassion and things like that. You don't want to use your sexuality in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with female lawyers unfortunately, about that issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if that's the way that you're going to conduct yourself, you're not going to have a very long career and you're not going to be respected. And I remember years ago, there was an older attorney and he said something to me very demeaning and very, like sexual.
Mm-hmm.
And I just looked at him in the eye and I just said to him, how would you feel if someone said that to your daughter? And I don't, you know what? I don't think that man ever forgave me. I don't think he ever forgave me.
But that's a good line, right? That's a great way to sort of nip it in the bud as well,
Right. And I want people to respect, whether you're a young lawyer or an older lawyer, you want people to respect you for your talent.
Right.
Not for the way you look or, the way that you come across, in a non-professional way.
Right. And I think it's important. I think what you did there was that you nipped it in the bud early. There is a comeback from that because you stop it immediately rather than letting something like that go on and then having to dig yourself out of that hole, right? It's something that should be, addressed instantly almost. And that's a great line.
And also I think it is too, it's having boundaries. Boundaries are so important, not only with people within your office, but outside of your office with clients. I think you always have to be aware when you're with a client that it is an attorney-client relationship. It's not a personal relationship. And, there's, nothing that says that you can't, if you're a psychiatrist, I think that there is a law that says you could never date a past patient.
Right.
We don't have something like that, but I can understand that being an issue.
Right. Absolutely. Anything else? Any other pitfalls to avoid? I like that one, sexuality. Any others?
No, I think don't oversell yourself initially. Mm-hmm. And I think that is what you were saying, Erica, too, about bringing in somebody else, and I think because we live in such a competitive market that people have a tendency to oversell not only their own abilities, but also, don't worry, I'll get you custody of your kids within 2 weeks. Right. Or, I'll get you millions of dollars.
Right.
You can't oversell in trying to, get business.
Yeah.
And so I think.
Yeah. So not over promising and then under delivering, because that doesn't do you any good, right? Moving forward. So yeah.
No, because then then your clients are going to be angry. So I think but also I think it's a balance. You can't be the kind of person that goes in and says to somebody, well, based upon your facts, I mean, you're just going to have to be prepared that you're going to lose. I mean, I would never
Right.
say that to a potential client. So it's the balance of, the truth, but in a positive way.
I'm your host, Erica Moore-Burton. As the president and founder of Round Hill Legal Search, I've spent over 2 decades connecting with incredible attorneys day in and day out. I decided it was high time that we share some of their remarkable stories, lessons, insights, and inspiration with the world. Join us weekly as we have wonderful conversations with our guests, or simply a session talking about some career tips, advice for you as you light your own legal career path. What role do you think mentoring, sponsorship plays for younger attorneys, and tying that sort of into the business development? Because, oftentimes younger attorneys, they have mentors for the practice, but there aren't mentors for business development as well. And what are your thoughts on that?
That's interesting. I never thought about that before. I think it's a great idea. And I think, what I would like to do, we have an attorney that's joining the firm. And he's joining our Orange County office. So usually what I would do is just set up a dinner with just the partners. But then I said to myself, you know what? Let's open it up for the younger associates as well. So they can go out and they can socialize. And, maybe there is an older attorney there that would then, bring them to the next meeting. But I think it's a really good idea. But as a young associate, you have to put yourself out. You have to say to the partner, if you have any business development dinners or meetings, I'd love to attend, those kind of things. Yeah. So, even if they don't invite you the first couple times, I think you have to keep planting the seed and keep, asking.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Because I think it's a really good idea. Yeah. And my partner, Mark, is great at doing that and great at advising young attorneys to join groups in order to develop business.
Yeah, no, and that's great. Goes back to your point about rejection. And, even in asking a senior associate to go, if they say no the first time, to keep asking, keep on asking, keep that follow up. So when an opportunity does arise, you're going to be top of mind. And it will be like, oh, okay, well, Lisa keeps on asking about going to meetings with me. This might be a good one for her to join me on. So absolutely. And yeah, exactly. Absolutely. So, gosh, I could speak to you all day, but mental health, I want to talk to you about, obviously you're a business owner, you're practicing, you've had all these years of practice. I know that at points it probably has been extremely stressful for you. How have you managed your stress over the years? How do you manage it now? What do you do? Like, what's your go-to when things get a little too much?
Well, I have several go-tos now. I won't mention all of them, but I practice a lot of yoga.
Okay.
Which I do on the weekends, and that is like my sacred time and space. And it really, I know people always say, well, it's not so rigorous. It's not like running or kickboxing, but there's something about it that gets you out of your head. And it's just so relaxing. So I love to do that. I love to spend time with my family and friends. And actually, I have my granddaughter sitting with me now. She's coming to work with me. Her name's Lila. And also, I love at night going home, putting my hair in a ponytail, putting on my sweats, and watching television. Who doesn't love that, right?
Who doesn't love that? Yeah, with Netflix now. What's your show? What's your favorite show? Right?
You don't even want to know. I've really sunk to the bottom. I loved Outlander,
Uh-huh.
And I loved Yellowstone, and there's some foreign ones I watch, but I'm too embarrassed to tell you what I'm watching now. It was a prior USA Today show.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. We'll leave it at that. So I think
Yeah.
Mo's just put a little note for us. We got 10 more minutes. So I do want to jump into Erica's Fun Five because I also like to show that there's always another side to individuals and personalities, etc. So you alluded to it earlier on, but about the best piece of advice that your mother or another influential woman has ever given you in your life. And I know that your mother said be independent. Is there any other advice that you've been given from your mother or anybody else that you'd like to share?
I think not only be independent, but my mother was always big in dressing for success. And it used to bug me when I was young,
Mm-hmm.
but I understand that. And now, because I think, and everyone can have their own fashion statement. You don't have to conform to any norms, but I think it's important how you are perceived,
Yes.
no matter what your style is. So
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think you should dress for success. And I think that gives you confidence when, you leave the house, that you're put together and, you're confident. And I think it gives you that little edge.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I would say that too.
Absolutely. It's funny. I think that generation just had the same advice. So my grandmother would always say, never leave the house without lipstick. Like that was her
Yeah.
that was her golden advice. Don't walk out the house without any lipstick. Again, to
Which
the point
I
about being sort of presentable as well. So that's great.
which I do way too often.
Right, right.
I always forget to put on lipstick.
It kind of sometimes you don't have to put full face on, just a bit of lipstick and you're good to go. But
Exactly.
what is the most impactful book you've ever read, Lisa?
Oh, that's a hard one. I maybe something like Exodus, or I remember, I loved Marjorie Morningstar by Herman Wouk, and it talked about a woman's independence. And that was that was really the generation before mine. So I love that book. And I want my granddaughter to read it, and I'd like to read it now as a more mature woman,
Right.
because each age that you read it, you get, you look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, I love those books where you read them and it has an impact on you. You go out into into the world, you live life, you come back and it has a different meaning at a different time in your life. So that's great. Okay. What is one goal that you haven't accomplished yet, but you still plan on reaching before you expire?
Well, what I would love to do, a few things. I would love to do a jury trial. I've never done a jury trial. Family law are judges only. So I think that's something I would love to do. And I think one day have my granddaughter join the firm and try a case with her. I think that would be wonderful.
That's great. So she wants to be a lawyer.
She does.
Excellent. Yeah. You do. That's great.
And she's a mini me.
Oh, that's amazing. The best teacher. You got the best teacher there. What is your favorite quote and why?
Oh, my favorite quote is Scarlett O'Hara.
Okay.
Tomorrow is another day.
I like that. Okay. Tomorrow is another day. And hero or shiro and why?
Oh, there's so many shiros. I love Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Sandra Day O'Connor. Women that have been trailblazers before their time. Eleanor Roosevelt. I just think that there are so many amazing women that made our lives so much easier. That Gloria Steinem. Mm-hmm. When I was a young girl, I so looked up to her. And they did it without, like we were talking about before, using their feminine wiles.
Right.
They were strong women, and that were respected for who they were.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So as you look back, and I know we've only got a few minutes left, but as you look back, what would you tell the younger lawyer in you? This is good for your granddaughter as well, right? What would you tell Lisa 30 years ago?
I would tell Lisa, don't take it so seriously. I
Okay.
used to get so upset about things, and
Hmm.
I don't as much anymore. I mean, I do sometimes,
Right.
but yeah, I would tell me to, like, smell the roses
Stop and
for
smell the
sure.
roses a little bit more. Okay, I love that. So, with that, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Really enjoyed our conversation. So many gems in there. So, I hope that our listeners have been able to pick up on many of them. And I feel there's a part two to this conversation, Lisa. So, I hope that you'll come back and have another conversation with me in the next season. Thanks for tuning in and listening. I'm your host, Erica Moore-Burton. If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure that you share and subscribe to get new episodes as they come out. If you're an attorney looking for new opportunities, head to www.roundhillsearch.com to get in contact with one of our recruiting associates. And don't forget to send your career questions to podcast@roundhillsearch.com. Until next time.
And I remember years ago, there was an older attorney, and he said something to me very demeaning and very, like sexual. And I just looked at him in the eye and I just said to him, how would you feel if if someone said that to your daughter? Whether you're a young lawyer or an older lawyer, you want people to respect you for your talent, not for the way you look or, the way that you come across, in a non-professional way. It's having boundaries. Boundaries are so important, not only with people within your office, but outside of your office with clients. Because then your clients are going to be angry. So I think but also I think it's a balance. You can't be the kind of person that goes in and says to somebody, well, based on your facts, I mean, you're just going to have to be prepared that you're going to lose. I mean, I would never say that to a potential client. So it's the balance of, the truth, but in a positive way.